Okay.
This is the Edition Unfiltered podcast.
Welcome back. Well, welcome for those of you who are joining in for the first time. But it's been a really long time. I owe you an explanation and I owe myself some accountability. And I feel like this would be the perfect time to do it. And the perfect conversation to have is motivation, or actually lack thereof. So I'm going to get really candid with you, really unfiltered, really transparent. Have my whole life story set here, and we'll start the new year with a new perspective in mind, or I guess a more transparent perspective. But I have been away for a really long time, and it's not that I did not want to post episodes or that I was over this whole podcasting thing, which is completely lies. I could not stop thinking about podcasts and episodes. In fact, every time that I'm doing something and a thought comes into my mind, it's like, oh my God, this would make such a good podcast episode. And let's just go by the fact that I said, oh my God, and pretend like I actually meant to say that. But I sort of just didn't have the motivation to do anything. And that's what I really want to talk about today. I really want to get deep into it. And I want to talk or address the issue that motivation is just, it's not enough. It's not like how we see on the Instagram reels, on TikTok. Not that I have TikTok, but I have Instagram TikTok. Not anything that we see that gets posted out there, because that's all the surface level stuff. It's all when everyone's accomplished something. You don't really get to see the grimes and the debt and all the messiness that goes into that accomplishment. And sometimes we forget that motivation is just, it's not a constant, it's a flash. You get these flashes of motivation and you feel like you can take on the world, but that motivation doesn't stay with you when you're actually taking on the world. It's sort of just disappears and appears when it wants to. And I've read about this. I've heard people talk about this. I've never experienced it. And now that I have, I've kind of got a new perspective, because motivation is important. It's definitely the key to getting you off of your ass, but it's not the key that gets you stay there. The key that gets you stay off your ass is the discipline and the consistency. I have had, so let's back up for a second. I know I'm all over the place, but like I said, I want this to be unfiltered. So as the thoughts come into my mind, I'm just going to go back and forth. Please bear with me. I'm trying to get sort of message out there. Hopefully by the time I'm done, it's actually conveyed, or you get the takeaway from there is actually what I want it to be. But let me start from the beginning. So I've wanted to be, I wanted to create a YouTube channel. This is like back in the day when YouTube wasn't really a big thing, but I was kind of inspired with, I don't know if you guys have heard his, but like Ray William Johnson, he's a really funny comedian, and he posted like this Equals 3 channel that he had. And I was really, I was inspired by what he had done and his journey, and how he had just creates all these videos and gets people to laugh and smile. And I would watch his videos, and I still do. He doesn't have a channel anymore, but that's still something that he does. And I really wanted to follow in his footsteps and just create a channel to talk about essentially what my podcast will be talking about. But I was just too afraid to do so. I was projecting my insecurities on what I would have imagined would be the audience, or the people on the other side of the screen would be watching me. And obviously the judgments were all aesthetic to me, particularly because that's usually you judge a book by its cover. And we all know that happens in the real world. In our fantasy worlds, that's not a thing, but the world we live in, that's a very prevalent thing that we all face, especially women. And so I kind of just shied away from that, because I was a teenager. So you can just imagine already I had so many insecurities, and the people that I was with didn't really make me feel best about myself. Girls in school weren't really nice, and I didn't feel supported. I didn't feel beautiful. I didn't feel worth worth it. Obviously that's changed, but that's not something that I had felt. And so I just didn't do the YouTube. And then I came across podcasts and I thought that was perfect. I could get my voice out there to whoever wanted to listen and still do something that I really wanted to do. And so in 2020, I finally decided I was going to do it. I got down. I was so motivated. Like the motivation was taking over me. I researched so much to do with podcasts. I created my own website. I created my own logo. I had all these pictures in mind that I wanted to do. Everything that I wanted to talk about. I created my introduction, my intro and outro, all these new words and vocabulary and things that I learned. And through the process of doing that, I learned how to create a website. And I created my website. And then I learned about creating logos, because you need a logo, you need an artwork for your podcast, like it's a CD or a DVD cover. You need to have that. And so that's what I did. I must have created thousands of samples, and I've flooded my friends with them. Mashvi, Sid, thank you so much for your feedback. I really bombarded them with images of my artwork. Took the feedback in, asked my sister to do the same thing until I was finally happy with it. Obviously, there's so much more evolving to do. That's usually what happens. You evolve, you grow. But at that point in time, I was still very new to it. And so it was something that I figured would be a nice way to get started in. And then I learned about intro and outro. And then I was like, I need something that screams my personality. Well, not screams my personality, but just it's just me. I'd listen to it and I'd laugh and I'd smile. And it reminds me of something. It's nostalgic to me. Anybody else who's familiar with the sounds. And I then got all these ideas and stuff. And I finally put together something which you heard in the beginning of before the episode started. That was all me. Something that I'm really proud of that I did. And I got through all of that completely motivated, because this is just the start. I was so intentional with the time that I was spending that I got so much work done. And finally, when it came to releasing my episode, this is where the lag happened, because I recorded the episode in 2020. I wanted to talk about, I recorded at the end, actually December of 2020. And the episode was actually to do with the shit show that was that year. And I really lagged on it and didn't release it until very late 21. Now, the lag had to do with the fact that I was procrastinating. I was too afraid to get my voice out there. Again, with the judgments. Like, I was afraid of anybody that would listen to me would roll their eyes and say stuff. And in my mind, when I think of the people that are listening to me are the people that I went to school with, and I'm just thinking, shit, they're probably judging me. And because, for a really big majority of my life, these people were a part of it, and everything that they said, and as much as it shouldn't, it did matter. It did make a difference to me as a person. And so I don't think about every single person. I think about basically the friends that I had and what their opinions of what they would think of this when they heard it. And I kind of expressed my concerns to Sid, who is my friend from school, has turned into family, and I love to the utmost bottom of my heart. Just a shout out there, because I know she's listening. So we talked about this. She talked to me and walked me through it. And I finally released the first episode. And oh my God, it felt fabulous. I was over the moon. I had these visions in my mind of how many people I would finally get to, the people that I would talk to on this journey. And it was amazing. It kind of just then sort of sparked another motivational episode that I had, where I was on to the next one and onto the third one. And then it really subsided. The motivation that I had to find time to record an episode with somebody or myself, because not everybody has time to record an episode with you, or your timings don't align with each other, and that kind of just leaves it to drag on. And obviously at this point in time, once a podcast is new and you're not really in a famous perspective, you can't really just go all to these famous celebrities and known people and be like, hey, sit with me on a podcast episode, because you're not paying them. And obviously they're on that a podcast with you for their own intentional purposes, which is to get to your reach as well. So I obviously don't have any of that. But in my mind, I'm imagining all of this stuff. I don't know. I kind of diverged. I don't know where I was going with that. But yeah, so it got to the point where I didn't really have the motivation to do any of it. And here is where I kind of let myself down. I waited for that motivation to come around instead of just continuing on. I said, you know what, when I get motivated again, I'm going to start doing it again. And guess what happened? A whole, I want to swear. So a whole fucking year passed by and I didn't get shit done. I have recorded episodes. I didn't edit them. I took my slow ass time going through even a single episode. And guess what? I haven't posted a single episode or published a single episode in 22, and I can't believe that it's 23, that I wasted the whole year doing this. I'm literally in complete, I wouldn't say hatred, but I can't believe I let myself do that. And what comes the most at me is that the episodes are ready. All that needed to be done was the editing. And here is the biggest point that I have hopefully learned and hope to educate you on if anyone else is going through a lack of motivation episode, as I like to call it. But if I had just pushed through and forgotten that I needed motivation, and I would have just been like, this needs to get done, it needs to be posted so I can post the next one and record the next one and continue to do so and stayed completely consistent, I would be in a very different place right now than I am. I would probably have increased my audience for all I know. Hell, I would have like probably 1,000, 20,000 people listening to this episode right now, but I don't, because I didn't do it. I wasn't consistent. I gave up. I just waited for that burst of insane motivation to come down on me for me to actually get work done. But that's just not how it works. That discipline needs to be there. And if it had been, like I said, we'd be having a different conversation right now. But not to regret much is that I've learned that I shouldn't be doing that. And I've also learned is that motivation sort of disappears when I'm doing tasks that I don't want to. Like, the editing was fun in the beginning, but have you ever heard yourself recorded? I know for the most part, it's not fun. It's not. I don't like listening to myself, which is weird because I kind of have to when I record the podcast and edit it. And the editing part is where my insecurities and my my fear of what is going to be said about me kind of jumps back at me, which is why I was also demotivated. When I'm listening to myself again and, editing out stuff that I said, I'm like, damn, why did I say that? I sound so stupid, or I sound annoying, or I sound dumb, or I sound insane. Like, just goes on and on about all the bad things that I say about myself, and I say them to myself as I'm listening to me speak. Paradox there. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to be so confident and then listen to something, and because I'm listening to it for a second time and a third time, I'm really overanalyzing and criticizing myself, and I shouldn't be doing that. And so I've become aware of one of the reasons why I'm not motivated to do something, or where I kind of procrastinate and elongate the process more than I should because of this very point. And so now I've come up with solutions. So when you know the problem, so I've accepted that I fell back on my promises to everyone and I didn't do what I was supposed to do. I promised myself I would get 2 episodes out there every week, and I haven't done that. I promised you guys the same thing, and I haven't done that. But there's no one that has held me accountable. And I'm hoping that you guys will now hold me accountable. I want that external accountability to be in place for me to actually get through everything that I'm doing or everything that I want to do. Because if it's not there, I don't want to say this because I'm not going to do that, because I've now have elements in play that will make sure that I don't fall back into this whole process again. But my key takeaway from this extremely eye-opening journey is that if you're planning on getting into something or going and doing something, don't rely on that motivation to be there with you the whole time. That motivation is going to open the door for you and take the first step in, but you have to keep walking to get to the destination that you want to, because if you don't and you wait around for that motivation to come in again and get you to the next step, you're going to be waiting a long, long time. And it's the same thing. Is if every single day, every single time that you do something, you take that one step closer to where you want to go. And it doesn't look like much, like one tiny step. But if you look at that one tiny step is 365 tiny steps. And when you're looking back at the 365 steps back, you realize just how far you've come. And that is the consistency and the discipline that's going to get you there. The motivation is going to open the door, but the discipline and the consistency is going to get you where you want to go. So if you're in a conundrum like I am, do what I did. Accept it. Accept that you are in a dud and that motivation has disappeared. And then find a way to keep yourself consistent. Hold yourself accountable. Make somebody else, that external accountability that I was just talking about, make somebody else hold you accountable. Now here I've tried to ask you guys, I've asked my friends, I've asked my sister to hold me accountable, to make sure that I get in the episodes that I've said I've been doing or that I want to do out. When that accountability is there, it changes everything, because you're not just holding yourself responsible, but you know that there's this external or these other people that you have to, so you can make the excuse to yourself like, oh yeah, I was tired, I didn't feel like doing it. But how are you going to tell 16 people I was tired, I didn't feel like doing it? At one point it's going to be embarrassing after they ask you 5 times, hey, what's going on? And all you say is excuses. So that's why I really think that external accountability will come into play. But yeah, that's my life story. Not really, but that's where I've been for the past year. Is just, I don't want to say what I thought in my mind because it just sounds awful and it's very vivid. But I realize that I am where I am today because I did not do what I wanted to do yesterday. And so now that's going to change. I feel like I've repeated myself way too much, and I'm going to listen to myself and realize how much repetition there was. But I'm not going to criticize myself, and I'm not going to cut out things because I feel like I've listened to it way too much and I sound stupid. So bear with me. Like I said, completely unfiltered and as transparent as I could be. So that's exactly what you're going to get. You're going to get the raw version of this with extremely, extremely few edits of me coughing and having a mouth fart or something. So obviously you don't want to hear that. And so that's what's going to be out there. But I also want to ask if there is any feedback that you have that you would like to see me talk about, or something like the word of the podcast, place of the podcast. I like that because it kind of gets me to learn about a new place and a new word. But you guys might not feel the same way. And as much as these episodes in Unfiltered are for me to vent and talk about everything that's wrong in this world and right in this world, it is also about you, because you're coming on the journey with me. And so if you find that on this journey that we are in together, which is a partnership, I'm doing something that I should not be doing. Now, I mean criticism to an extent that it's not bullying. I welcome it. I want to be able to put out information or say stuff in this world that's actually useful and not just for the sake of it. So a word if the podcasts are helpful, or place if the podcasts are helpful, let me know through the various social media platforms and the very incredible website that I've built by myself. If you go onto the website, you will have the access to links to all of these, and I shall see you guys or speak to you guys soon.